An hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come. Obviously that's a salutary, timely reminder for us to do that, to stay awake, to be Gregories. That's the word that keeps coming up in Greek. Gregorita, the word Gregory, the name Gregory comes from that. Someone who stays awake. We should all be Gregory, in that sense. But you know what? I'd like to focus especially, to know what that challenge really means, to focus especially on the Son of Man. The Son of Man will come. 3 times in the Gospel today that phrase comes up. And as you may know, that's the phrase that Jesus most often, according to the Gospels, uses about himself. He doesn't say, at an hour you do not expect, the second person of the Blessed Trinity, the Son of God, will come. I mean, that's not that that's false, but he doesn't say that. Now why? Why did Jesus keep insisting on himself as the Son of Man? To make us realize that he was and he is here among us as one of us. Remember the parable of the Last Judgment when, yes, he comes in his glory, but he says, did you recognize me as one of you? In fact, as the lowliest and the least among you, did you recognize me in the other sons of men, the other daughters of men, which I am one of you. That's where you'll find me. That's when the Son of Man comes, when we see other sons of men and daughters of men and recognize him there. But we haven't wanted any of this. That's too simple, a little too challenging. And so, we keep thinking about the Son of God. Jesus is going to come, in all his glory. As I say, it's not false, but, Jesus didn't ask to be worshipped. He asked to be followed. You ever think of that? Jesus never said, worship me. He said, follow me, plenty of times. And that's a little too challenging. So let's do something a lot easier. Let's worship him. And then we keep a respectful distance, and grovel and worship and feel very humble, and then go about our business. Following him is a whole lot harder. So again, I'm not saying it's wrong to worship him, but if you really want to worship him in the way that he wants, then start serving him in the sons and daughters of men, where you'll find him. That's the real challenge. Not creating this pompous, obsequious distance, but in recognizing him right here, right there, right there. And living accordingly. And when we realize our connectedness and our responsibility for everyone, then we realize we have to, in the midst of our daily lives, which is exactly what the gospel is talking about, right here in the midst of our daily lives, we encounter him, and we follow him or not. 2 people will be out in the field, 2 people will be grinding at the mill, just in daily life, sons and daughters of men, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. And that's when he comes. That's where he comes. That's where he is. And do we recognize it? Now sometimes that passage about one will be taken, one will be left, is speak about the rapture, something which doesn't belong to the Christian tradition at all. It's not the point at all. That's not how it works at all. It's simply saying that one in daily life will be ready and another in daily life will not be ready because they haven't lived their daily life in the perspective of the Son of Man, right in their midst. And again, what does that mean? Well, I think the other readings give us a very good indication of what that does mean, to live in that perspective. It means to live at peace with one another. As fellow humans, with Jesus the Son of Man as our guide, to live in peace. That's why the responsorial signs. Let us go to the house of the Lord. May peace be in your walls, in your buildings, prosperity and peace. Peace, the fruit of the Spirit, the great beatitude, the peacemakers. You want to ascend the mountain of the Lord? Then, as this first reading says, let us ascend the mountain of the Lord and walk in the light of the Lord. And what will that mean? They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. What an eloquent image. Stop making arms and turn them into farm utensils. Can you imagine what that would do for the American and the world economy today if they stopped making arms and turned them into railroad tracks and bridges and farm utensils and started living in peace with one another? Preparing not for war, but preparing for peace. Well, that's a little too hard. We're a little too threatened, and we got to be practical, and we got to defend ourselves. Do you? Did the Son of Man defend himself and protect himself in this world? Take a look. So let's worship him instead of following him. But we'll miss him if we do that. If we only do that. If we don't see what it really means. If he make us a peace. So to walk in the light of the Lord. Same as the second reading. The day draws nigh. The light is come. So let us no longer fulfill the desires of the flesh. And a modern translation of that, by the way, is not the body or the flesh as we understand it. It's ego. That's a good modern translation of Paul's flesh. Ego. Ego concerns, egocentrism. How am I going to protect myself and defend myself and get ahead of myself? And, so everybody else, my fellow sons and daughters of men, how am I going to be better, richer? Whatever violence I have to do to achieve that. So yes, it talks about licentiousness and carousing. Ego, it's not the body that's at fault, it's still the ego that's at fault there too. But then it says jealousy and rivalry. That's a real problem. That's one of the real manifestations of ego that's destroying our world and destroying our planet. So, do we become peacemakers? Do we let go of our fearfulness and our self-concern and our protectiveness and our exclusiveness and our superiority and our arrogance? And do we say, I am responsible for my fellow sons and daughters of men, in whom I recognize or not Jesus Christ, no matter what religion they are, what nation they are, what culture they are? Am I as defenseless as the Lord, the Son of Man, was in his day? Ready to die for everybody, as Jesus himself did. A little too hard. Let's worship him instead. And keep our distance. Keep our distance from Jesus, the Son of Man, and thereby keep our distance from one another, those other pesky sons and daughters of men. I'll have my own piety and worship Jesus. And miss him when he comes, because he's here right now. And the person grinding at the mill next to you, and the person in the cubicle next to you, and the person at the dinner table with you, and the person next to you in the queue. One is taken and one is left because one recognized and the other didn't. Son of Man is here. Wake up.